panel. The subject of the panel is gas in Turkey. I would like to invite Ms. Özlem Cıngıloğlu, Chief Investment Advisor, BSP Advisory from Turkey. Our panelist, Vladmir Feygin, President, Institute of Energy and Finance from Russia. Ms. Gulmira Rzayeva, Research Associate at Oxford University for Energy Studies. And Mr. Trevor Witten from Witten Consulting. I would like to invite our moderator, Ms. Özlem Cıngıloğlu. Only water. Okay. Now. I would like to invite Mr. Howard Bewan to the stage.
Okay. Very quickly, ladies, gentlemen, your excellencies, audience voting again. Could we have slide 3, please? Question 3. Okay, gas overtaking oil as a main source of energy. 1, 2, 3, or 4, please. No, yeah, it'll be quick. Thank you. And the next one. There's the results. Okay, looks like B, C, bit undecided. And the next question. Okay, some dates for you to decide amongst for transportation, which is what was addressed last time. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us. I see very distinguished guests among us. Today we have Mr. Vladmir Feygin, Ms. Gulmira Rzayeva, and Mr. Trevor Witten. Welcome. Actually, sir. Welcome back to Istanbul. And our topic is the gas in Turkey, and I think you would like to start, sir.
Thanks a lot. Yes. Okay, dear colleagues, yes, that's organizers asked me just to start, and I'm a little bit in a peculiar situation because that's, of course, the main topic, I think, for our Turkish colleagues, but okay, if I'm encouraged to do this, please keep in mind that I'm a little bit outsider. So there could be some just views or projections which don't fully, correct from maybe Turkish point of view. Okay, let's talk. So I think that was a very good start at the first session and very good topics, including from Mr. Fatih Birol, because he told that natural gas, LNG in particular, will be key driver of changes in combination with renewables. And if we let's look at the current energy scheme in Turkey, again being focused on gas. Turkey is already an important player in European and Middle East gas scheme, I think by two main dimensions, as a consumer and as a coming gas transit countries. And they both give a contribution to Turkey position. As gas consumer, Turkey is a growing purchaser of gas. Several years ago, when total gas consumption in Europe was under severe decrease, let's say, my very close friend and close friend at Gulmira, as I know, Jonathan Stan, marked that Turkey, for a number of years, was the only country in Europe which increased and quite visibly increased its consumption. Now, for a few years, we see that the consumption, gas consumption in Turkey is stagnant. Nevertheless, total energy consumption is growing, and that's natural for growing countries. So I think that is a temporary situation. If you look at the composition of energy mix, the growing share was for hydro, it can't be for very long. Okay, we'll look a bit deeper later on in it. Now natural gas is among three top fuel sources in Turkey, jointly with oil and oil products and with coal. Yes, in contracts with coal, Turkey imports almost all of its gas. And I understand that there is some concern from Turkish authorities and maybe broader. But from point of view of energy security, I don't think it is a concern or it will be a concern. And with mainly through the improving Turkey position in the total infrastructure, in the total gas scheme, including this diversifying of sources of import, which Gulmira kindly told already. But looking broader, currently Turkey is the fourth largest gas consumer in Europe, in total Europe, after UK, Germany, and Italy, above Netherlands and many others. Why? Let's look at this picture. The consumption grew for decades since 2000 by average 7% a year. Very, very significant. I think that as far as the economy of Turkey is and will grow, let's say 5% on average, when energy consumption, notwithstanding of improvements in energy savings, energy efficiency, and so on, looking at global comparison, will grow 2.5% each year. The question will be where this just supply come from, and whether gas will be a significant contributor. I think yes, but let's illustrate it. I think that main question, of course, is to look at gas in comparison with coal. I can understand, and of course we have to appreciate the position for Turkey to increase its internal energy supply, and coal is an internal source. Nevertheless, if we look at coal just consumption, about 60% of it comes from imported resources, and 95% of hot coal comes from import. Whether all the consumption, coal consumption, can be covered by qualified coal as hot coal, it's maybe a challenge. Therefore, my feeling is, it's of course up to Turkey to decide, is that looking at the general picture, at all this global policy and pressure on CO2 emissions, and looking at that coal is majority imported resource, I think that there will be a tendency to decrease that dependence on coal. Which the speed of it, of course, depends on a number of reasons. Then, if we look at the import of gas sources, yes, that's Russia. It's 55%, something like that. And historically, it was even the percentage was even higher. Then Iran. We know there are some just even disputes with Iran. And from Iran, gas comes from its northern part of the country, where there is a lot of internal consumption. Iran is very rich with gas, but mostly in its southern part. And there are infrastructure limits for transportation of gas. And so, looking broader, most of this gas in the northern Iran and coming to Turkey comes from Turkmenistan. So Iran is a sort of transient country in this way. So it may be a question whether it can be significantly increased. Azerbaijan is a very important resource, but if we look at the LNG, which at the moment is 8%, let's say, of consumption, it is extremely diversified already. Algeria and Nigeria were main just contributor to LNG mix, but there are others, a growing number of them, so there is no question of that it is really diversified. The question is, as we are aware of, is mostly with infrastructure, connecting import terminals with major consumer sub-regions. So for further increase in LNG supply, there should be infrastructure investments. Then let's look further on this picture. I think that in total energy supply, role of renewables is very undermined as well, except hydro, and definitely will increase. The dynamics of oil consumption. Here, I think there are challenges, and that we've heard this general picture in the first session. Oil is not a competitor to gas, frankly speaking, because of reasons we know. But oil consumption, I don't think will significantly grow. It's very interesting component in, let's say, oil just deliveries here. That's LPG and ethane. it is products, it is oil products, but it is mainly products from what is called wet gas. So gas which composes of components heavier than methane. And it is very important because it's efficient not only as a motor fuel, I mean propane, but as a chemical feedstock. I do believe there is a good future to increase its role of LPG and maybe ethane in energy mix in Turkey. It has to be further, I'm sure, further developed because there should be a cooperation with those who produce it. For instance, in Russia, there are growing resources and with growing production, growing export of LPG. That's because more and more wet gas is under production. And so I think it would be of significant interest of potential cooperation, investment cooperation, and so on. If we come just to infrastructure and security issues, I would start with some recollection. We started discussing with, let's say, 12 years ago with our Turkish partners. We've heard such comments that Turkey understands its geographical position and would prefer to be a hub in gas. A hub, it means to purchase gas at the inflow and then to resell it at the outflow. Maybe that position delayed some infrastructure developments. Later on, Turkey became a very active member of Energy Charter Treaty with all its transit security provisions. And I think based on that, that's good assumptions to that's current development of transit and to becoming a real hub, a hub in terms of flows mostly. And for that, Turkey is in excellent position. It is already an area of pipelines which we are aware as Blue Stream, as Tok Stream 1, which soon come to production, as TANAP definitely, potentially Tok Stream 2. I would tell that Tok Stream 2, that's mostly a question of collaboration and discussions with the European partners. For Russia, that's fully ready. And not only because we know about its huge reserves in East Mediterranean, soon starting production of LNG in Egypt. Potentially there could be connections with Iran and Central Asia. So there are really growing opportunities and really already implementing very significantly sized projects. So therefore, I think there is no question of security of supply for gas. Of course, it can be a question of the efficiency of consumption. For instance, about 1/3 of the current gas consumption in Turkey is for heating. 40% is for power generation, 30% for industrial use, and 30% of heat. There would be maybe reasonable to think about more share of combined heat and power. The tendency now is that, yes, the electricity production, heat production will be more localized, more diversified, and there are very good technological opportunity for that already in place. And combined heat and power can produce energy in form of power and heat with above 90% of total efficiency. It's close to world records. So that may be a way to increase the energy efficiency and to solve its internal problems. Regarding the position of Turkey as a hub, yes, one of the questions, of course, is storage. Where gas storage capacity is growing, including this year, I think there could be further efforts to that, because that's a real challenge, the significant seasonal shift in consumption. That's a point. But combination of gas storage, if it will be increased, and maybe, yes, floating LNG capacity, I think that the storage is more efficient. That combination could smooth this this problem. The regulation of internal gas market. Yes, we know it is under the change. The question is, in my view, is how to balance these changes with maybe some appeals to immediate total market liberalization and the real natural economy needs. We know example of European Union, we know what happens in other parts of the world. Slowly it happens in Russia. Turkey is more closer to, let's say, Russian situation, but in Russia we have already gas exchange, we have TPA, third-party access, more developed. So I think there are ways for significant improvements in this regulation, and I think that it may assist in the negotiation position, let's say, with European Union on all these transit issues. You know, there are sensitive questions, politically sensitive questions, and the progress with regulation of internal gas market may help. I would just again return that Turkish Stream 2, there will be, my understanding, yet in front of us political discussions. And it is very important to position is better. We can take some lessons from regulation on TANAP pipeline, because TANAP pipeline is not fully in line with FED package and with just EU regulation. It is some sort of exclusion. But I've read these documents, I will tell you, and on TANAP and TAP. And I thought it was wisely done as far as it respects the just requirements of FED package, but makes some clear reservation. For instance, that in future the capacity will be increased, we knew maybe users will come and so on. So I think that in any such discussion, including as in Talk Stream 2, such consideration can be taken, such positions can be taken into consideration. So with this speaking, I will just stop at them for a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feygin. We will be getting the questions and answers at the end of our panel. So, Ms. Gulmira Rzayeva, she is visiting us from Azerbaijan. And your turn, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Well, I touched upon the Turkish market briefly at the last session, but of course there are lots of things to talk about the Turkish natural gas market, because there are, as I mentioned, tremendous changes that are underway at the moment. The Turkish government implementing new energy policy, which designed to, as I said, lessen dependence of Turkey on external suppliers, but also to lessen dependence on natural gas in the energy, in the share of natural gas in the energy mix and power generation in the country. The goal of Turkey was to bring down the share of gas from some 47% in 2008-9 to 30%. So by 2025, this was the midterm goal of the government. But Turkey has already achieved this goal. So the share of natural gas in energy mix in power generation is around 31-32%. So the goal has already been achieved. That's why I think that the Turkish government at the moment, from now on, probably has less incentive to continue the policy of reducing the share of gas in energy mix. Turkey imports 99% of its gas because only 0.2 BCM of gas is produced locally in the country. So as you see, dependence is tremendous, and any possible gas shortages or supply cuts in the country could result not only energy security issue but also internal political issue. So and Turkey faced these kind of shortages. Well, actually, it's not about only the supply security, but also its demand, the huge difference in demand fluctuations, seasonal demand fluctuations in this country. During the winter time, demand surged to 260 million cubic meter per day, whereas the BOTAŞ gas transmission system's capacity, send-out capacity, is only 200 million cubic meter a day. So this means that during the winter demand surge, what BOTAŞ does is simply just cut supply to power generations, the state and the private power generation companies, also to industry, prioritizing gas supplies to residential sector. So those companies that don't get enough gas from BOTAŞ or from other suppliers, what they do, they simply have to just offset this gas with other possible energy sources, which is in Turkey is mainly hydro, but now also solar energy. So, but with hydro there are also some problems because the offsetting shortage of gas with hydro hugely also depend on the weather, whether it's a drought or wet. So when it's a drought weather, obviously it's impossible to have enough hydro energy. So starting from 2013, the government introduced support scheme for renewable energy companies. So what the government did is simply started introducing feed-in tariffs and buying energy from the companies for quite for break-even price. But that was a very good offer for the companies because they had almost 10 years of feed-in tariff guarantee, 10 years of purchase guarantee. And this resulted as a boom in renewable energy production in this country. So this also, was beyond the expectation of the government because there was a huge production of renewable energy from between 2013 and now. And now government is thinking how to introduce more competition between the companies, so to bring a little bit down the share of renewable energy, because back in 2013 and 14 the share of renewables was only 4% and now it's 8%. So I think this, it was a great success in achieving the goals of increasing the share of renewables in power sector in this country. But this will be continued in the future. Also, as I said, I don't think that the share of natural gas in energy mix in electricity sector will decrease tremendously because the government already achieved its goal. Another problem of being able to supply for BOTAŞ to supply all the eligible consumers in this country, especially during the peak demand, is the bottlenecks in the gas transmission system of BOTAŞ. Till today, there was many bottlenecks, and the system as a whole was quite constrained to transport the gas to all the consumers, especially to, offtake all the annual contracted quantities from the suppliers, and especially from Azerbaijan, because on the east part of the country, the BOTAŞ gas system capacity was constrained. BOTAŞ was not able to offtake all the contracted 6.6 BCM of gas from Azerbaijan. So in that case, according to the contract signed, long-term contract signed with Azerbaijan, with the Shahdenis consortium, BOTAŞ had to pay fines because there is a take or pay clause applied in this contract. These problems also being solved because BOTAŞ built two compressor stations in the east part of the country, in Hanak. Now, if the share of Azerbaijani gas in this country was 12% 2 and 3 years ago, now it's 14% because BOTAŞ started off taking 6.4, 6.5 BCM, almost all the contracted volumes from Azerbaijan. This was the problem with Iran as well. The contracted volume is 9 BCM, but BOTAŞ has been taken like 7 BCM. Another problem with Iran was the price. The Iranian gas price for Turkey was the most expensive pipeline price during the high oil prices. When oil prices were above $100, the Iranian gas price was around $500. This was the way higher than gas price in Europe. So obviously, BOTAŞ went to arbitration and won both cases in arbitration, and the Iranians had to grant 13.3% of discount. At the moment, the Iranian gas price is, I think, the second most expensive, but the price is quite good for the Turks, and they are started importing more gas from Iran. Well, the Russian gas price is also fluctuating depending on the seasons for Turkey. And you know that there are two types of contracts with Russia. One is signed with BOTAŞ, and another contract is signed with the 7 private companies in Turkey. So their prices are slightly bit different. Because the BOTAŞ gas is subsidized in this country because it's a state-owned company, but the private company's gas price is not subsidized. So the private companies, they have to compete with BOTAŞ price internally, and that's actually very hard to do, especially now when Turkish lira was depreciated against the dollar. So that's why the private companies demanded 10.25% discount from Gazprom, but it turned out that Gazprom, although I think promised before, but did not grant this discount, and the case went to arbitration. And the arbitration ruling is expected to come out in 2019. So actually, private companies are selling gas at the moment in this market at the prices which takes into account the discount, 10.25% discount, and many things with the prices in this country will depend on the arbitration ruling. So coming back to the gas transmission system and the reasons why Turkey is investing actually billions of dollars in expansion, its send out an entry point capacity is well, because, as I said, because of the constraints in the system, but also because Turkey wants to import as much gas as possible, even despite that the demand is declining for last 2 years and will be stagnated in the following, if not stagnated, but growing very slowly in the following years. And this is despite the BOTAŞ projection, which was done back in 2012. Actually, BOTAŞ projection said that it was done in 2012. BOTAŞ projection was that the Turkish gas demand will be doubled by 2030 from then 45 BCM to around 81 BCM. By 2030, but obviously this turned out not the case because, as I said, the demand by 2030 is expected to be, according to our projections, 55, 56 BCM. And this demand will come not from power generation sector, as it was throughout the last 10 or 15 years, but from mainly residential and industry sector. So the gas transmission system of BOTAŞ is also being expanded. BOTAŞ also investing a lot in construction of compressor stations all along the system, and also the two new pipelines, TANAP and Turk Stream, which actually the only downstream infrastructure which will add to the entry point capacity in pipelines in the country, because all other existing importing pipelines, like pipeline between Azerbaijan and Turkey, which is Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum pipeline, between Turkey and Iran, which is Iran-Doğa-Bayezid pipeline, and the Blue Stream pipeline between Russia and Turkey, the capacity of these pipelines will not be expanded. And contrary to this, capacity of Western Line pipeline, which also transports gas from Russia to Turkey, will be decreased because of Turk Stream. Well, when Turk Stream will come online, the transportation through this pipeline will be decreased or nullified by the time when Gazprom will be able to transport all the contracted volumes through Turk Stream. So these two pipelines are very important for Turkey because these pipelines answer the Turkish long-term goals to import more gas from various sources and to expand the capacity of infrastructure, as well as, this is the case with TANAP, to diversify supply sources. TANAP fully answers all these goals of Turkey because with TANAP, Turkey will not only ensure supply security, but also will be able to diversify supply sources, bringing additional volumes of gas from other regions, because TANAP is quite scalable project, and at the first stage of operation, it will only ship half of the capacity, 16 BCM of gas, whereas Turkey will take 6 BCM at the middle of the country, the place called Eskişehir. And the rest gas, 10 BCM of gas, will be flowing to the Turkish-Greek border for transportations to Europe. So some 16 plus BCM of capacity will be spare capacity to transport gas from other sources. Turk Stream will fully also answer the country's, policy of supply security, because at the moment Turkey is not really happy with the gas transportations through Western Line, because as you know, these pipelines passing through Ukraine, Hungary, Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. So Turkey is concerned of any possible cuts off in the event if there is some, again, crisis between Russia and Ukraine. So Turk Stream is fully answers the Turkish goal to ensure supply security from Russia via this pipeline. But with Turk Stream, I think Turkey could gain more than just that, and more than just price discount for the Turkish companies, Turkish importers, and that benefit Turkey can get in the negotiations with the Russians. So Turkey can demand, the price indexation, not in somewhere in Europe, for instance, in Greece, but in Turkey. So with that, if Turkey will be able to index the price and kind of create a virtual hub in the Turkish soil, Turkish territory, then Turkey will be able to create this virtual tribe of hub and be able to index its gas prices, not only with Gazprom but also with other suppliers as well. Because till date, Turkish all the long-term contracts of Turkey and natural gas prices are indexed to oil and oil product prices, which reflects all these international oil price fluctuations. So this is a chance for Turkey to change the situation, and it depends on the fact how Turkey will be able to straighten its hands in the negotiations with the Russians. All the measures that are taken at the moment by the Turkish government actually lead Turkey to this, because Turkey has, as I said, by doubling the import capacity by 2023, Turkey has all the chance to negotiate better terms and conditions in the 2020s when all the long-term contracts of Turkey due to expire. With Azerbaijan, with Iran and Russia. So current measures taken by the Turkish government of increasing, diversifying supply sources, and including LNG and FSRU, because there are tremendous investments in LNG and FSRU infrastructures at the moment in this country. I think Turkey will be quite successful in negotiating better terms with all these suppliers. Coming back to prices, especially LNG and pipeline prices. Well, obviously Turkey has, especially now when LNG capacity being expanded, and FSRU as well, Turkey has much better chances to import more LNG if there is some, for instance, Turkey is not able to offtake all the contracted volumes from pipeline suppliers due to bottlenecks or infrastructure constraints. But the problem is with LNG is the price. The LNG price for Turkey is quite high. It's much higher than pipeline gas. It's around 25–30% higher. The difference is huge. And that's why LNG is not the best option for Turkey, at least at the moment. And obviously, you know that the LNG, the preferred market for LNG is the premium markets, and that's the Asian market. So if prices are good in the Asia, so the cargoes are going there. But LNG is coming to, well, I'm not talking about the long-term LNG contracts of Turkey with Algeria and Nigeria, but mainly spot LNG, spot cargoes. So these spot cargoes are coming to Turkey when prices are high. And the Turkish buyers cannot afford buying LNG at a higher price because, as I said, well, first of all, the private companies' gas price in this country is not subsidized, and they have to compete with the potash prices, which is extremely difficult, especially now when lira was depreciated against dollar. So that's why the share of LNG in this country, well, including long-term contracts, LNG contracts, is only 7.4%. It was last year 7.4%. Well, it can be growing in the future in the event, well, in winter time only, in the event if potash is not able to supply pipeline gas to the power sector or industrial sector, and this gas needs to be offset by LNG, spot LNG. So I think this is all that I was going to tell, and if there are any additional questions, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Ms. Rzayeva. I think we'll be getting the questions and the answers at the end of our panel in about like half an hour. We have Mr. Trevor Witten from Witten Consulting. He's a guest subject matter expert and he's joining us from United Kingdom. There you go, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. Good morning. I recognise that I'm sort of between you and lunch, so I'll try and be brief. We're running a little behind time. I'll also try and take on the role on the hoof, as it were, to bring together the comments of my colleagues. Obviously, sitting last, there's the possibility of repeating oneself, and I'll try and avoid that. So I'll just try and bring everything together in the context of today's subject, which is gas in Turkey. The economic fundamentals are very important. We haven't heard a great deal about them, but in summary, I think Turkey is a very large economy. It's probably about the 18th largest economy in the world. And gas plays an essential role in meeting its primary energy demand to drive that economy. It's also a fast-growing economy. It's probably one of the fastest-growing economies in the OECD and the EU by GDP measure, which, depending on who you talk to, is something around 4% per annum on a sustainable basis. Those conditions have encouraged and are encouraging a strong financial direct investment track record with backed up, I think, very importantly by somewhat innovative, commercial, robust legal frameworks, which are essential to provide certainty and to kill ambiguity when it comes to marrying business with politics. The policy framework then is an important part of gas in Turkey. And I think Turkey has been extremely clever and very smart in making sure that its legislation is aligned with the EU, its major economic neighbouring bloc. And that has facilitated energy deals across the country. It has also taken a large step when you consider where it is in its evolution of energy in providing third-party access to critical infrastructure. That is not only incentivizing investment because people feel comfortable that they can be a proper partner and participant, but it is also driving efficiency. Some of those fundamentals all come together in the concept that Turkey has projected through the, I think it's, forgive my pronunciation, but the YEKA energy initiative through its integrated approach. And that is a very shining beacon for potential investor to see something real on the ground that's coming together in an integrated way. So the energy fundamentals are very important. Energy demand is likely to double in the next decade. That's a significant growth in anybody's book. It's going to take at least $100 billion of investment. That's not lira, but dollars, remember. So there's an extra demand on the Turkish economy to be able to provide incentives and or the capital required to fund that investment. With that come capacity, but not capability challenges and risks. The sheer scale of what has to be done in the time that we have to do it is going to bring challenges to the government of Turkey. But Turkey, as I say, has been leading with a good news story around liberalization and privatization, sending all the right signals to increase investor confidence. It's certainly work in progress. From a gas perspective, gas is the principal fuel for power. There's about 26 gigawatts of installed capacity in Turkey that is fed by gas, and that's roughly about 32%, as we've already heard, of the total fleet in Turkey, with coal and hydro and renewables and a little bit of liquids making up the remainder. But gas is an essential component, and it has come down in its share, but by design, not by default. And they are about half of all the primary energy produced in Turkey is used for power. And that will vary according to the dispatch model, which dictates the role of gas in power as to how much gas is dispatched relative to other fuels and alternatives, which of course comes back to prices. While we're on prices, we just heard a little bit about the relative merits of LNG, liquefied natural gas, pricing relative to pipeline gas. The only comment I would make, if I may, is that the price is what you can get. There's no such thing as high price, it's the market price, and that's the price that you do the business at. It might be high on a relative basis.
Mr. Witten, I will have to apologize for the inconvenience, but there has been a slight change, so I will kindly ask you to wrap up for like 10 minutes, if that's possible for you, sir.
Less than that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Power, I would say that Russia remains a key energy partner. There's a complex relationship with the challenges around the hub ambitions of Turkey. The supply risk that we've heard about is mitigated through diversity. That is diversity of fuels, there's coal, lignite, fuel oil and nuclear, renewables, etc. There's mitigation through delivery, which is pipeline versus LNG versus FSRU versus renewables, which we've heard about. And of course, there's an important component of storage. The market's a very large market, 50 to 60 BCM, as we've already heard. And there's great potential in actually providing hub capacity, but there are some big risks. There's investment risk, there's legislation risk around liberalization and privatization. And in the words of my old boss, it's a good start, but only a beginning. There are regional challenges, but they are mitigated to a large extent by the Energy Charter Treaty. We've heard a lot about supply and demand, and we'll hear a great deal more about supply and demand after the break. But the security of supply risks have always been a perception rather than a fact in the energy business. I've been doing this for nearly 40 years, and there's never been a disruption that's actually stopped the energy flow. Examples today, Libya is still exporting 6 BCM of gas a day. Gas comes from Iran, gas comes from Russia, that goes through Ukraine. There are all sorts of challenges, but the commercial imperative has always managed to cool the political head. So it's something that is an irrational belief before force majeure has actually occurred. And finally, I think just to say, in order to wrap up, that the gas consumption may have fallen in Turkey. I'm not sure if stagnant's the right word. I think it's fallen by design. It is a success story for the Turkish government that through diversification and efficiency and a very strong nod towards the climate change initiative through COP21, etc., that gas has taken its rightful place as a primary energy in the Turkish economy, but nonetheless it has given away market share in order to allow others to come up in the margins. So I will leave it at that for now in the interest of time. I have obviously a great deal more to say, but we can pick it up in the breaks. Thank you.
I really do apologize for the inconvenience, sir. And can we get quick questions, please? No questions? Lady Olga? And with that, I do have to apologize, but I need to make an announcement in Turkish. I'm sorry. Sayın Fatih Terim Bey'in başkanlığında futbol panelimiz biraz sonra burada yer alacaktır. O yüzden sizleri aramızda görmek isteriz. I apologize, ma'am.
Lady Maitland, thank you very much for your kind question. I don't wish to take time out of my colleagues, but perhaps one of the things that we have talked about a little, which is very important, is this idea of a hub. And a hub is going to be very dependent, not on supply risk, in my opinion, for Turkey, but on demand risk. The major demand is going to come from Europe, at least in this geography, and that demand risk is gas in the context of Europe as a declining resource, and we're going to hear about that this afternoon. So I'll save my remarks on that until this afternoon, but also to say it's all about price and price discovery. We've heard that all of the long-term contracts come to an end in the 2020s and they will be renegotiated. I've spent the best part of the last 6 or 7 years involved in price review, dispute resolution, in arbitration, and it's not a pretty place to be, but it's very, very important because it sends the signals that price in Turkey has to be market-led through gas-on-gas competition rather than the old oil indexation, because only in that way will those supplies find their place in Europe, and that's where, if there is demand for gas transiting Turkey, it's going to arise. So I'll leave it at that and allow my colleagues to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Witten. And Ms. Lady Olga, if you don't mind, if you could present our guests with your gifts, we would really appreciate it. Mr. Vladmir Feygin. He's the President, Institute of Energy and Finance from Russia. And Ms. Gulmira Rzayeva, she is the Research Associate at Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, Advisor of the World Energies Council. Mr. Trevor Witten Consulting, guest subject matter expert joining us from UK. Thank you. Thank you. Later on I'll get it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, dear guests. Thank you very much. We appreciate your participants.
Our panel will start immediately. The subject is that time football, and the coach of the national Turkish team, former coach, Mr. Fatih Terim, will deliver the keynote. Thank you.